So, as mentioned, this is our very last panel for today. We already spoke about how to manage and enable global teams. We spoke about the role of tech and talent management, and this panel will be specifically on global mobility. A lot has changed, a lot is still changing. So yeah, we have some experts on the topic here with you. We have Sally, we have Jerome, and then we have Anthony, our Director of Product, who you met already, and he's going to bring the perspective of some of the customers that he's talking to. So welcome to stage. I'm very excited to have you. And maybe to kick things off, hearing from yourself, a quick intro and your tie to the global mobility topic.
No problem. Hi. Is this working? Hello. Oh. Hi, I'm Sally Flaxman, and I am Head of Global Mobility at Remote, an employer of record. I'm hoping everyone here knows what it is. We've had quite a few events where people had never heard of an employer of record, and I think it's something that would be really beneficial for a lot of global mobility experts. And that's me.
Let me test my mic. Yep, you can hear me. I'm Jerome. I run the recruiting team, employer branding team at Wise, formerly known as TransferWise, branding tagline. So we're money without borders. So mobility is key to what we do, but on the financial side. Before Wise, I've been a year, and I spent about 9 years at LinkedIn as well, growing the LinkedIn business across Europe and moving a whole bunch of people from one continent to another. So that's me.
Nice. And Anthony, you met me before. My tie to the global mobility space is purely around Localyze. I hadn't worked in the HR space or mobility space before I joined about a year and a half ago. So I spent the last year just learning and speaking to customers and speaking to even Gartner about like what their talent trends are, and just trying to upskill myself and understand what it is that is so powerful about the mobility space.
Yeah. Thank you. In the first panel, we mentioned so often that there's so many things changing, and like now, if we dive a bit deeper into global mobility, that area has been affected so much between companies working fully remote, hybrid, now in office. And so, what are the specific things that you've seen changing most drastically in the last 3 to 4 years? Where to begin?
Well, from my perspective, I mean, I believe that companies are using employer records to hire talent globally and not have people be forced to be working from anywhere to have good jobs. And I mean, I have a team of specialists all over the world. I actually have only met 2 of them in person, and yet it works. You know, we have great check-ins. We have a great diverse team. You know, the culture is amazing. It's something that works, and it gives us 24-hour coverage for our clients, which for me is really important. And it's something I don't think the world has seen before.
Yeah, spot on. I think for me, it's gone from being something for the very few in organizations, maybe 4 years ago, to really truly accessible for everybody within the business now. In my word, it's transformed our ability to do recruitment. Obviously, when your talent pool is the entire globe, it's a lot easier than a very niche location like Tallinn in Estonia, for example. That's a very good marketplace. But we've seen a lot of transition to enabling people to be able to do their job, regardless of where they are. And it's really made the way that we scaled Wise in the previous organization when I was a go-kartist for a year as well, is really enabled us to find the right skills in the right places in a far easier way, and therefore in a far quicker way, and therefore in a way that we can deliver and build products for our customers much better, much quicker.
Yeah, from my side, like back a few years ago, right? Mobility was there for senior execs or grads, I suppose, in grad schemes for large organizations. I worked at Airbus, and they had a 6-month rotation in Toulouse, right, to go work at a manufacturing plant. And I didn't do that because I left beforehand. But like in terms of those things, and I think COVID has expedited the journey of hiring talent anywhere and working anywhere you want. I have lots of friends and lots of colleagues, ex-colleagues in the tech space, and using remote and other EORs to like hire global talent, like we have got a team working in New Zealand versus the US, and like they're friends who kind of working anywhere they want to be. And I think it's really powerful. And what I've seen from our customers is that just bringing that talent, right? Specific talent. You especially now with AI, there are going to be specific universities in specific countries that are going to train individuals who know exactly what they need to do and need to be bringing them across borders or hiring them where their families are in those different places. So it's kind of changed dramatically and kind of really moved forward in the right ways in the last few years.
I just want to actually connecting to the product that we're solving for. I think the pain 4 years ago when I worked at LinkedIn, we grew a huge sales force across Europe, and we had sales dev reps in apartment buildings in Dublin, and then COVID hit. And, these were Turkish-speaking, Finnish-speaking, localized market language skills from those markets that we'd relocated to Dublin to do the job. And they were like, you know what, I'd quite like to go home. And it was really hard for sales organizations because when you carry a quota for your revenue for your business, you have so many regulations and taxation issues. And it was a really complex HR situations to face with 1,000 salespeople stuck in a one-bedroom apartment in Dublin, not allowed to leave their apartment and say, hey, like my family in Finland has a farm. Like, can I just fly home? I'm like, well, it depends how much revenue you bring in and how you're going to get taxed. And people just didn't connect. Like, we were not connecting with a human problem. We were connecting with a regulatory problem.
Yeah. One thing that I found very interesting is that, of course, when you rethink an organization from scratch now, it's all easier. Like you can design it differently. But if you had a bigger team, a bigger organization before, it's a massive transformation process. And so, of course, right now, talent is driving it. Like, as you said, especially during COVID, people went everywhere. Not everyone notified our teams, which I think now we also really need to get under control a bit more. But how do you see that? Like really now also communicating those limitations maybe to employees, like really saying hey, that's as far as we can go. But also how far do organizations have to push the boundaries because the requirements from employees are just so high?
Well, for me, it's having those boundaries put in place is important because the work from anywhere is becoming more and more. We've been just having a discussion on it. You can work from anywhere, but we know that you have to be compliant. You have to have the right to work. You have to know what the tax implications are. And monitoring your employees is extremely important, and especially employees that are on work permits are restricted, to how much they can travel and be out of the country. And, it's our responsibility to know where our employees are at any one time.
But monitoring is important. We have people who turn up in different parts of the world. We literally do. It's like, I've just moved from Singapore to Dubai with my family. Where's the office? So you kind of need some sort of guidelines. I think the way that we try to do it is we're supportive as long as we're clear with people that there has to be a business need. So it has to make sense for the role that they do in the location they're going to want to do it. I look at my own team. If you're an employer branding specialist for the London office and you want to relocate to the Sydney office, it's going to require a change of job. It's going to require a change of responsibilities. So I think it has to make business sense, but we try to accommodate as much as we can. I think the flip side of that, the pitfall that I walked into as we're trying to develop our grad program, and I was like, wouldn't it be great? So my idea was, and I've had this idea for 5 years, so the world has moved on. Wouldn't it be great if you're a grad and you spend 3 years with us, and then you can pick a position at your grade anywhere around the world? And people around the world, they looked at me and went, is that not what everybody's doing now? But 5 years ago, for a grad, that would have been a huge thing, right? And now it's that's kind of an expectation.
We actually, like I said, we had a really good conversation at our roundtable just now about the push over the last 12 months from employees, employee-driven relocation, either due to I want to move my family and work somewhere else for however many years, or just workations, and the compliance is going to be a huge factor. And actually, is there a business need for this individual to go abroad? One thing I mentioned in that is that I see the compliance risks and everything else like that, managing it and seeing where everyone is a bit like GDPR when it came in a few years ago, well, 5-6 years ago. Everyone kind of was like meh about it, and then suddenly the first fines started getting handed out, and everyone was really on it and was like, okay, we are not risking getting done for GDPR violations. So as soon as the first court case hits or first issues hit with regards to compliance issues or tax issues or social security issues, when people are relocating and moving their entire family to Dubai without telling anyone, as soon as that hits, everyone's going to kind of lock it down as soon as possible, and that's why you need to think about it now, not after the fine.
You touched upon like also different case types now, like short-term mobility. We spoke about that. How do you see like those new case types factoring in? And like, do you think we're moving into a world where, depending on the setup of the company between remote and in-office, there is a certain list of like case types that will come to that? Or is it just getting infinitely more complex and like a company will really have like the choice between 1,000 different setups?
Well, from my perspective, it's really difficult for me to comment on that because remote does not have offices anywhere in the world, and we have never asked anyone to go into an office. So from my perspective, I think the minute you start controlling people and telling them where they need to work from, dependent on job, of course. I mean, in a lot of jobs, you might need to be in an office, but anyone who can work remotely, asking them to move into an office, you're at risk of actually losing that talent. And I think that's something that companies have to take into perspective, of their whole teams, can they or can't they work remotely?
I think there's a generational piece as well. People like me like to go to the office to escape the craziness of a home with 2 very young children. I also have a team of recent young generations who entered the workforce during COVID, and going to the office is completely alien. Not only is it completely alien, it's an additional cost that they've not factored in when they were negotiating their salary and joining the organization, because they never thought for 1 minute that they may have to pay to go to an office every day. So there's complexity around that. I think for us, what we try to do is, what I truly believe in, and Isabel, our CPO, talks about, is we want to show flexibility. It is the future. That's the truth. There's no going back on that. Gen Z would be, 30% of the workforce in the next 3 to 5 years. That's what they know, that's what they want. And we're going to have to adapt as employers. But there's always going to be a part of your role that is bigger than just your job. Like, you don't work in isolation as an employee. You have a responsibility to a community. That community could be your local office, or it could be your team, or it could be your organization at large. And as you grow up in seniority, you have a responsibility to give back to maybe slightly more junior people in your organization who need and want to learn from you, who want accessibility to you. Now, you can do that in different ways. You can do it by making your calendar available. But sometimes that physical presence for us as an organization is often invaluable.
Yeah, but on the question about different types of case types and what people are trying to do, we have seen from our Localyze customers the push for working from abroad, workations, and the compliance issues. That ask and that request has come significantly over the last six months, with employees pushing that. And so I see more and more of those sorts of cases, and being able to kind of employees working anywhere. And then that will probably lead on to, well, now I've loved working in France for 2 weeks. Can I now relocate here? And then I think that will drive a significant portion of relocating to different places where companies don't have entities. And I see that kind of being the push over the kind of next sort of 12 months or so, which is, I'm now trying out working abroad. I'm going to like it. And maybe there's going to be a pool of employees in a certain location, and you've got to start creating entities in that location and whatever else it might be. And I think that's going to be a huge ask over the kind of next 12 to 18 months.
One word was mentioned a few times now, compliance. And it's an important one. It also sparks some fear among CEOs. Like, that's the topic, like where you get them with. I feel like because of compliance and of course like also other drivers now, some organizations are cutting down on like flexibility and like things that they offer, but at the same time there is a cost to that because you risk losing employees. And so for the audience, what are the other arguments you would use to like really advocate for investments in global mobility, flexibility options, things that they can use to get global mobility higher up the agenda?
Well, for me, I think now we have a lot more options. You know, employer of records, I know I'm from one, but, you know, before people were restricted to where they had entities, and employer of records were not really compliant. You know, people didn't trust them. They were very expensive. And now they are a lot cheaper. And I think it's starting to give, you know, recruiters especially that leeway in when they're hiring. You know, when we often have people coming to us and saying, oh, you know, we're based in Spain, but actually we would like to work for you, but we want to move to the UK, you know, and that's the sort of thing, if the talent is right, you need to be able to say, okay, you know, we can do it. And it's, you know, knowing that using an employer of record, and I don't want to be selling it too much, but it's exactly that, you know, the compliance, the payroll, everything is handled by an employer of record. Your talent is happy, you will have control of what your employee is doing, and there are options now. It's not just for contractors anymore, you know, they can be full-time employees.
Yeah, I think it's the point you made there about the right talent. I think like there's going to be a shift in terms of who you need to hire, where you need to hire them, and historically, especially in the tech space in the UK and throughout Europe and the US, they hired predominantly internally, right? Internally in those locations. But there are amazing organizations and universities that are teaching people to, I mean, again, generative AI is going to be a game changer over the next 18 months, even if it is not already. And I think you need to be able to hire those right people. And to Hanna's question, like, how do you make the argument for global mobility? And it's like, well, the argument is we just need the right talent. Like, if you don't have the right talent, you're not going to succeed. So we hire the right talent, they're going to stay for longer, they're going to be happier, stay compliant, and that's it.
And also, don't forget, I mean, there is a quote by Elon Musk that I really like. It's probably the only things I like about Elon Musk, just to put it out there. But it's that the laws of physics are the only rules that you follow. Everything else is a recommendation. And don't forget, the regulations also change, right? And I think as business entities and organizations, there's some really good groups out there, like skills networks, that tap into the government and that are lobbying for change. Because, you know, what we're all suffering from is there's antiquated rules and regulations that are often at a country level. They're not even a European regional level. That every country has their own very specific requirements, whether it's taxation or the free movement of talent, and obviously impact of Brexit, etc. And you can lobby organizations to be ready for the future, because you need that mobility. You need people to cross borders easily and not be penalized for it, because productivity in the Western world has stagnated in the last 30 years, and everybody's trying to figure out how do we drive more productivity. But one of the solutions is staring you, you know, in the eyes. It's glaringly obvious, but you just need to change the structure and the framework.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one, because I feel like, of course, with COVID, we've seen such a big spike in flexibilities that's being offered. I feel like now it's a bit of a step backward, and I think we really have to push for that not to happen. Another factor, like now, if we start looking into next year, another factor that is driving decisions right now is the challenging economic environment. And so companies, of course, are really looking at, like, what are we spending it on? How do you see the impact of that current challenging climate on global mobility, especially when we start planning for next year?
I'm seeing a lot of pushback from clients on covering cost. It's now a lot of employee-led and actually paid by the employees. Or if the client covers the cost, they will ask the employee to cover the cost of their dependents. So I definitely believe that companies are going to tighten up when it comes to travel, when it's by choice and not by necessity.
Yeah, same. I mean, we've become very more thoughtful about how we spend money. I mean, first of all, our mission is, why is this a great product? Because the cost of transfer of money is really, really low. We can only do that if we're very, very careful about the bottom line. So each business owner, wise like myself, have a target on budget, which then positively impacts reduction of fees. So every penny, every pound that we spend makes a difference. And on the travel front, the use of technology, we're being a lot more thoughtful about why people travel, why people move, what the investment is. And we want to facilitate it, and at the same time as we need to be clear on what the return investment for our customers would be to facilitate it. So yeah, there's a lot more rigor, I guess, around how we make this happen.
Yeah, in terms of the cost, I think we've seen a big ask from our customers over the last 6, 12 months in terms of the allowances for these relocations, and I suppose the increased flexibility given to talents to spend that, and the drive is that the increased flexibility means that you can reduce the cost slightly. So like, okay, while before we just said, okay, here's a relocation package, you've got X amount spend on housing, shipping, whatever else it might be, flights, dependents. Now it's like, okay, well, we'll give you way more flexibility so you can spend it whenever you want, but actually we're just going to give you slightly less. And I think that's one way to kind of, that people happy with, I think it was the first panel we sort of said, like, people are happy with flexibility, and that's the drive. And if that's the way to do it, then that's the way to do it, because you want to be able to move talent across borders because they are happier, and you should try and do that as cost effective as possible by giving them flexibility if possible.
Yeah. Staying now with the topic of next year, planning ahead, and also the final questions before I open it up to questions from the audience. What do you see as the biggest trends, not only shaping next year, but let's say we get out of the challenging economic environment, like what are the positive things to look out for?
For me, I'm seeing a lot of the short-term relocations, nomad visas. A lot of countries are starting to offer them, and our clients are saying, okay, that's all right. We will allow you to get a nomad visa, go and work in a country for 1 or 2 years. And for me, I'm seeing more of that happening than work-sponsored visas and work permits. For me, that I think is going to be a big thing. And I think we should all be lobbying with our countries to be offering it, because there are very few actually that do it, but yet it will improve the economy in those countries. So I think it's something that should be pushed.
It's a very interesting one. Just to add, one discussion that we had in Berlin was also, I don't remember who it was, but like someone mentioned that they talked to politicians and they specifically said they don't want that because like then they don't get the tax and like basically a piece of the cake. And then, there's a bigger argument around that, but I fully agree. I think like that's something we have to push, but governments' minds really need to change.
I'm not going to lie, that stuff infuriates me. I mean, it's such a narrow-minded view of like, what about all the people that want to come into your country and pay taxes in here and pay and get local economies going? Sorry, just a bit of an annoyance. But I think on the trend, I think every conference covered AI really well, so we'll just park that for now. Everybody's trying to do it and always solved it, so let's come back in a year. I think on the global mobility front, I think the lobbying, like the progress that we can make with governments and regulators to constantly knock on a door. I think for me, I'm super lucky in recruiting that it unlocks a lot of opportunity, but I think it's going back to what we all said, which is mobility is there and accessible to people, but it's an option, but it's not for everybody. We have 6,500 WISERs in our organization. If everybody decides to move every 3 months and go to France for a bit and then Australia for the winter and then back, it becomes a real problem. And we'll need a lot of HRIS consultants moving people's home addresses all the time. So there has to be, so I'm kind of excited about people embracing mobility more, because I think what we're seeing now in a downturn is people are being more conservative. And even though they have this wish of taking a risk, they're worried about putting their head above the parapet and being the person that has moved to Costa Rica. And guess what? We don't need someone in Costa Rica. So every time we're looking at reduction in force, that person could be it. So I'm hoping in the next 12, 18 months, you see people's confidence come back and embrace this ability to move around a bit more, because we've definitely been impacted by that in the US. If you do the interstate mobility, I think we spoke about, in the US has reduced 75% in the last 3 years. And that's a problem for us, because we don't have an EOR, so maybe we should talk afterwards. But we only have a license in 3 states, so it becomes really difficult for us to recruit across the country.
I agree with both points. I think the nomad visa, I think it's going to be a push because employers are going to want to stop spending, but people are going to still want to travel. And you saw the slides that Hanna presented right at the beginning in terms of from Gartner and the push for millennials are going to want to move across and live abroad. It's inevitable. But to have a slight different tangent, I think the compliance thing I think is going to be a huge thing over the course of the next 12 months. And because employee-driven mobility isn't going to go anywhere, like I think even in the large organizations which are driving everyone back into the office, employee mobility is going to be pushed really hard. So having a tool like Localyze to help you be compliant and all those sorts of things is going to be so important. I'm not saying we're there 100% yet, but like that's exactly where we need to be, because every type of mobility journey is going to have to be done compliantly and tracked, because you should know where everyone is at any given time, because what if there's issues, we've seen issues in, obviously don't want to get political, but in Israel over the last few weeks, so like you need to evacuate some of your employees, so who's there? You need to understand that and know what's going on. So I think that's going to be a big change over the next 12 months.